Greetings, Earthlings. We are here to discuss the movie Signs, why audiences loved it when it was released and then eventually hated it. So, what is the story behind this shift in perspective? We're going to throw some ideas out and some theories, talk about the movie a little bit. Put your comments and questions in the YouTube comments here, and we will talk about them live. So, guys, what is one of the reasons you can think of why this movie was loved and audiences turned on it?
I'll let Doug do the big reason.
Well, then give us a small one.
I'll give you another.
It may not just be mine.
I can give you a possible reason, and I think it had something to do with what Doug said at the time when it came out. M. Night was putting out. I think he had Unbreakable, and then he did Signs, and then he did.
He had Sixth Sense before Unbreakable.
I thought Unbreakable came out before Sixth Sense.
Nope, Sixth Sense was his first.
Okay, so it's Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and then he did Signs. So he's got two movies that he's already kind of getting the hype of being this guy with this really cool twist. And then you see Signs, and Signs also keeps you on edge. It didn't really have, the big plot twist. It kind of did. It was in a different way. And I think it was just that height of everything that he was doing. And I think his next film after that came out, and it was Lady in the Water.
They did Village after that.
The Village was next.
Then Lady in the Water.
Yeah, and The Village didn't get as great reviews, and Lady in the Water was different. It didn't really have the plot twist. It was more of kind of like a bedtime story. So I think at that point, people started getting tired of M. Night. And then you get some new viewers who come in and they watch it, and times have changed a little bit because now everybody's starting to watch the lost footage movies are coming out. And I think that's where horror and suspense was going. So when somebody sees Signs, they're like, that ain't scary. That's not creepy. We're seeing Blair Witch and we're seeing Paranormal Activity and all that stuff. That's scary now. And this isn't. So, that could be one reason, is just a different audience started to see it. And they're like, I don't see what the hype is.
Yeah. I kind of theorized that his movies took a turn for a while. I think he seems to have recovered somewhat, but I don't know that he would necessarily be considered the master of horror. But yeah, those three movies that he put out to start that hot streak were really good, but follow that up with The Village. The twist really upset audiences. It was not what they were marketed, right? And then Lady in the Water, same thing. I went to see all of his movies by this point, on dates or double dates at a theater. And I'm sitting there in Lady in the Water, and I thought this was going to be a scary movie. The trailer kind of gave me that impression. I don't know why. But it turns into, like you said, more of a fairy tale bedtime story. I'm like, well, wait, 2 movies in a row were marketed to me as scary movies. And it's not that they were bad. It just wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But then he released his first R-rated film when I was in college. And The Happening trailer looked so interesting and scary. And it was hyped up as this is going to be the scariest movie M. Night's ever made. And then Dan, across the hall from me in college at Purdue, I asked him, "Oh, did you see The Happening? Was it good?" He's like, No, don't go see it. It's awful. Worst movie I've ever seen. I was like, are you really? Because M. Night's movies have been pretty good at this point. Mm-hmm. And I did eventually watch it, and it is, you can enjoy it as so bad it's good, maybe. But I think his string of later movies changed how people saw his early movies. And you can actually see, I really enjoyed watching Signs again. I thought I wouldn't, because maybe I had a little bit of that M. Night was blown up in my head type of idea too. But I watched Signs. I can see the flaws there, but it still is a pretty entertaining mystery. So I kind of think his later work colored how people look back on some of these earlier films. But if you erase his future films, and I said I think he's rebounded some. If you erase that middle section of his career, those first three, those were big. And Sixth Sense was not actually his first movie, but it's the first one that really gets talked about.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Knock at the Cabin, his latest one, or I guess it's not. I guess he's got another one out now, but Knock at the Cabin was done really well.
Very well.
I saw Lady in the Water one time. I saw it in the theater, and I was with you. It was different than what I expected, but I don't remember it being bad. I remember it being entertaining. I'd actually like to sit down and watch that one again. The Village, I had no problem with The Village, except for Doug ruined the whole thing for me when we saw it, because he sat down and he goes, "This is what I think this is going to happen." And he like nailed it. I was looking at him going, "Did you see spoilers?"
Really?
He goes, "No, because I was just watching the previews."
I never saw it coming. Now, I do like Village now that I know what to expect.
Yeah.
But like the first half is so creepy. Second half is like, what? So if you haven't seen The Village, you should watch it, but just know that it's not going to end as a horror movie. Otherwise, you're going to be like we were, and you'll be disappointed on first viewing.
Well, I'm not going to go into the big one yet, but I'm going to bring back a oldie but goodie. I think a lot of people turned on him because of the Ghostbusters 2 effect.
Because of
Talked about this in the past, but yeah, look at Signs, or not Signs, but I'm sorry, Sixth Sense, the first movie that made him popular, the one that stepped up. I mean, he had, Haley Joel Osment had an Academy Award nomination for that acting performance. It was such a huge, spoiler, no, not spoiler, but just a twist at the end. And it's like, holy crap, no one saw coming. And, that was amazing. And then he comes out with Unbreakable. And that is a very, very cool, underrated movie. The people who love it understand it. You kind of have to have that comic book mentality a little bit. I'm not saying you have to be a comic book reader or anything like that, but you do have to know the genre. You have to have seen Avengers or something like that to truly understand, this guy who's just all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I have superpowers. What? It's like a non-funny version of Greatest American Hero. But again, a great movie. And then he follows that up with Signs. And at the time, everyone was saying, what a great movie, great twists and everything like that. And then came, as Nathan said, the middle ones. You had The Village, which I loved, but the twist was complete. It wasn't anything weird. It wasn't anything. It was just like, oh, it's them. What? They're just living in a state park somewhere. That's it. It wasn't an amazing reveal, but still the movie going throughout. What was that? Anyway, the movie going throughout, did it very well. But yeah, just the acting and the story and the character development was great. And then he follows that up with The Happening. And a lot of people didn't like The Happening. And I understand why. I loved that movie. I would say it's probably, well, I wouldn't say top 3, but it was very, very good. I enjoyed that. Now, wait, The Water before The Happening?
Yeah, Lady in the Water.
Yeah.
So you like The Happening and not in a so bad it's good way, like it's good way.
I will be the first person to say, and I'm a huge fan of him, but yeah, Mark Wahlberg sucked in The Happening. Okay. I think he was trying to play a character that Mark Wahlberg can't play. Mark Wahlberg can't play the sensitive. I'm just the sensitive guy. No, Mark Wahlberg, he's a jack dude from Boston. He's a rapper. He's, it's hard. It's like watching The Rock playing a
ballerina,
a serious psychiatrist or a librarian, and not in a funny way, and so I think that's why a lot of people dislike The Happening. But going back, I'm sorry, Lady in the Water, there was no twist in that. Everyone was sitting there waiting, M. Night, he's the twist guy. He's going to give us some big reveal. And at the end, it was just like, oh no, that was just a wolf attacking people. Okay. It was just a story. But you go back and watch it, it is again great character development. He makes the greatest characters throughout his movies and stuff like that. So when it took that little bump down, I think a lot of people, especially after Lady in the Water with no twist, were just like, well, that's not an M. Night Shyamalan movie. That one sucked. And it was just like, you don't have to make Sixth Sense every time. You don't have
Yeah.
to make Pulp Fiction every time. You can branch out, do other things. And that's what M. Night was doing. He was telling these amazing stories, but people were all showed up. It's like, okay, what's the twist? What's the twist? The Village, it was not as good of a twist as the previous three, but still good. And then again, the Lady in the Water just didn't have one. And then people gave up. And then you're like, oh, here's this new one, this rated R movie. Okay, this one's good. And then it was like, there really wasn't a twist in that one either. It was just like, the wind's killing people. The end.
Run from the wind.
But
is that seriously what it was?
Yeah. Mark Wahlberg says that line.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you about it afterwards. I don't want to give too much spoilers in here, but again, throughout the movie of where was I? The Happening, again, great character development, interesting twists throughout the movie, but just not a big twist at the end, which I find kind of funny because Signs, there's no twist. They think they're being attacked by aliens. They get attacked by aliens. They beat the aliens. The end.
Yeah.
There are some cool little things thrown in here and that, but you may have been sitting there expecting something, it's something else. It's not aliens. It's something else happening. But no, it just turns out to be aliens, and they do something, it's just an alien invasion focused on one family. So,
yeah. I suppose instead of a twist, he took all these little details from throughout the film, like the little girl setting the water glasses around in almost kind of like an OCD type of way. And he took all of their different character quirks and traits that they had and weaved them together to have a meaningful moment at a specific point in history, right?
Yeah. It still had the same formula of after you watch it, then you look back and go, all the clues that were there the whole time that you didn't pick up the first time. Like in Sixth Sense, the doorknob is red, everything, his wife never actually has a conversation with him when you look back at it. He's always wearing the trench coat. It's just stuff like that. So there's like all the little hints are there. And Signs had that. So at the end, when he's doing the reveal, there's the bat swing. There's this. And you're like, all the hints were there the whole time.
I got to say real quick.
Village didn't really, I don't think, had that too much.
Oh, it's just going off topic completely real quick. Look it up on YouTube. Nate Bargatze does a great bit about Signs. Or I'm sorry, about Sixth Sense. I'll tell you guys about it later. I'm going to throw it out. Nate Bargatze, great comedian, very clean, family friendly, and he does an amazing joke about the movie Signs. And it's
throw it in the comments if you find the link.
All right, we'll do.
I do have another theory too about why people may have turned on M. Night films, and this one in particular. So I think it's interesting that he always weaves a religious idea. Like there's always some spiritual idea that he's exploring in his films. And he's also interesting because his worldview is a mix of different things. Like you can see some Christianity in it, but you can see Hindu and Buddhism in it. You just kind of see this collage of different spiritual influences. But the one that he chose for this film, I think, could easily be misunderstood. I don't know exactly what M. Night believes about this, but in the film, he was trying to contrast the idea that God like directs things in our lives and makes things happen, like, providentially. He was trying to contrast that with the view that God's not involved in the world at all in the film. So that's why Mel Gibson's character is having this faith crisis. But like his way to explore that in the film was to contrast the two extremes. So either God has shaped everything in the world and directed every step of everything you do, and it all means something, or he's directed absolutely nothing, right? And Mel Gibson, his character, gets his faith back throughout the film. But you could watch that now, and since they're contrasting extremes, you could be like, well, that's not necessarily reality, right? Like if your mom gets cancer or something, right? In that type of thinking, well, that would mean that, well, God gave her cancer, as opposed to that cancer was just a result of living in a world that is a tough place to live, right? And this isn't a place where God fully lives, right? He's somewhere else, and he's somewhat connected to us here.
Mhm.
So a person could look at and only see the two extremes in the film and think, well, that could be dangerous theology. And like I said, I don't know if that's really what M. Night himself believes, or if he was just trying to contrast the two ideas. So he used the two extremes to make us think about it, like, how involved is God in the world? And yeah, what do you guys think about that component of this film? Because I mean that is very much right up there in the front in the consciousness of this film. It's not so much a background thing in this particular film.
I had a discussion last week with my mom about that thing. She watched our video that we had put out, and when Graham is saying, about the two types of people in the world, some see signs and some thinks, somebody's with us and they're watching out after us, and good or bad, we're not alone. And then there's other people who think people are lucky or they're just unlucky. There's no coincidence, things happen, and that's how you go. And where are you at on that? And I think it's a great question to stop and think about. Like, where am I at on that? I don't know. Sometimes I really don't know. Part of me wants to be group A, where I believe that there are signs and there are, for God is there and he's putting you in a position, and you get to make the choice of which way you want to go. I was ready to leave Indianapolis. Like, I hated my job. I didn't want to be here anymore. I was, I had an apartment by myself with my dog. I was done. I was ready to leave. And then I met my wife. So I had a reason to stay in Indianapolis. And, it was like, is that God intervening right there? Is this like, no, here's your reason, choose it or don't, but here's an option. So you got situations like that. But then I look at, as you mentioned, Doug and I, we were just talking about this friend of ours who, and we've mentioned it a couple times on this show, that we had a friend who got, he passed away a few years ago from cancer. And I don't think God gave him cancer. But it just seems like a black cloud just hung above this guy. Like, he could never get ahead. He would work at something and looks like something's going to pan out, and then it doesn't. He would buy a brand new car, and within a month, it's broken down. He would get, a new computer for all of his, he making films, something would happen. He'd get a job, and then the job would close. It's like he could just never get ahead, but he was always so positive and upbeat about it. And, you never heard him whine and complain about it. And that's a situation where it's like, I don't think God is purposely cursing this guy. I think this is just bad luck. I think he's just has bad luck. And that's just the way it is. Bad things just keep happening, and I don't know why. And she was saying, well, maybe God, maybe there was a way for him with all these different signs. And I kept going, no, that's not it. I said, you can ask anybody who knew him. Things for some reason, he could not get ahead. And it made me wonder, why is this happening to him? Not that I'd want that to happen to anybody, but why do bad things just keep happening? So
Yeah.
maybe I'm group B in that area.
Well, the person who has been going through a lot of situations like that and watches this film, might not like the film, because the film does seem to take the position that like God had a person fall asleep on the road at a specific time to kill Mel Gibson's wife. And like for what? For him to lose his faith and then get it back later? Well, he had faith before. Like, why don't you just not have his wife
Right.
die and then he never loses his faith? I mean, maybe his faith becomes stronger later, but yeah, like I said, I can't tell you if M. Night actually believes, God does things like that, or like we live on rails and we cannot get off these paths. Everything's predetermined. But I do know people who think, everything is predetermined and kind of it's like everything happens for a reason, but to an extreme. And I am more of a mix. I think we don't know the answers about a lot of things, but I am very much in the camp of like we have free will, but some things may be directed by God. So I sit in between the two positions presented in this film.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about like the public's relationship with religion over the past 20 years could have had an effect on how people felt about this film and M. Night's films, since he's always exploring these themes, right? And if you're only looking at the extremes, that could be difficult for people, because this movie comes out, we're just a few years out of 9/11. Everybody's kind of riding a high spiritually because we came together during that time and we realized how helpless we are as people sometimes, and that all we had was to pray at that time, right? Well, fast forward 20 years and we're in a very complicated religious and political climate, and people don't feel as positively about either of those things now. And that could play into how people see this film. But Doug, do you want to go into the big one now?
Well, and I do. I just want to throw one more. Well, actually, I want to add on to what you were saying. What does M. Night believe, and was he portraying that this was a sign from God? And I think he's basically the exact same thing you were saying, Nathan. Is you're not sure. So if you look at this as a movie, and not as a lot of people feel that it's preaching or, it's a testimony or something like that. Just watch it as a movie, as whether you're a believer or not. At the end, it's a happy ending. Now, yes, he is a preacher. He was a preacher, and he saw signs of God throughout the movie. And at the end, he's like, okay, God gave me these signs. He came to peace with what happened, and he had a happy ending. Now, if you just watch it as a movie, and as somebody who may not believe or may not be sure, you can look at it as like, well, you know what? He seems like a good guy. Okay. He's taking care of kids. And because of the tragedy he went through, all of this has given him peace. And whether you believe in God or not, whether, you think it's right for him to go back to the clergy or not, or whatever, you do need to be happy that a decent man who lost his wife and is now a single parent found peace in what he was struggling with. And I think you can just look at it both ways. Yes, it was a sign from God, and now he's back to where he needs to be. Or B, I don't believe in signs from God, but you know what? If he sees that and it brings him peace, I'm happy for him. Mm-hmm. And I think, and going both ways, I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. Now, I understand there are a lot of, should turn my hat backwards. There are a lot of dumb idiots everywhere. Dumb idiots who believe in God and believe that God wants everyone else who doesn't believe like they do to be evil and die. I don't agree with them. 90% of people who believe don't believe what they do. Go to the other extreme. There's a lot of people out there who, think it's wrong to have religion anywhere, even in church. Anybody who believes in God is an evil bigot who does this and does this. I would say most atheists don't believe that either. Most atheists are just like, okay, you do your thing over there, we'll do our thing over here. And I think that's what most people believe when it comes to religion. And I'm starting to get off a little tangent. I'll get back to the movie in just one second. But I think that's something that people need to realize moving forward. If you're a believer and this person's not a believer, sorry. I mean, don't hate them. Don't be mad at them. I mean, seriously, I think I've mentioned this before. It's a pretty crazy story. You got to have that kind of faith to believe in the fact that there is something out there that tinkered with some stuff thousands, millions, billions of years ago, whatever. And we showed up. And when we die, we got to go hang with him if, we, depending on what you believe and everything like that. That's a crazy story. So anybody who doesn't believe, I can't sit there and be like, well, how? Why? Are you just evil? Are you just a bad person that you don't believe in God? No, there's so many great people. I mean, I've got some really, really good friends who don't believe. They might be more agnostic than atheists, but still it's, I don't judge them. I don't think they're bad people. They're great people, great spirited people. They just don't pray, and they know what I believe in. I pray for them. It doesn't hurt them for me to pray for them. They know I pray for them and they're fine with that. And we live our lives. So, the people who watch this movie and get offended because they feel it's preachy, don't look at it like that. Look at it as a man who lost his wife a couple years ago, and he notices something towards the end of the movie that makes him realize how to kill or hurt the aliens.
Yeah.
Kill the aliens.
You could almost look at this movie as like a video essay, like on trying to understand something about faith or how people think or something. Like if you're not a person who is spiritual, you can still like watch this to learn about other people.
Absolutely. Yep. There's another. I always look back at different things. I don't know what the show was. I saw it on YouTube. Drew, you might know, but there's a Ricky Gervais clip, and he's speaking with a Christian, and this is in a TV show, talking about belief in God and not. And she goes, "Well, then, if you don't believe in God, why aren't you out there just raping and killing as much as you want?" And he looks at her and goes, "I do rape and kill as much as I want," which is 0.
I was like, oh, where's this going?
Yeah. It's
interesting
like,
comeback.
Just because I don't believe in God doesn't make me a bad person. I'm not going out there and just sinning left and right and, looking up in the Bible, what are the top 10 worst? Okay, I'm going to make sure I do all of these by Tuesday. Atheists aren't doing that. They're just trying to live their lives the same way you are. They just sleep in on Sundays. That's the main difference, not the main difference, but that's one.
I think that TV show is Afterlife.
It feels like it would be. I've seen a few of his things.
Show.
Yeah. And and in real life, Ricky Gervais is an atheist, and as an atheist and a comedian, he makes jokes, but at the same point, he's not. If I met him and we talked for a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, by the way, I believe in God," he's not going to be like, "Oh, well, I don't want to talk to you." Yeah. No, he's not that way, and most atheists aren't. That's the thing. And I'm sure we have more believers than non-believers watching this episode or any of them, but keep that in mind. You don't judge somebody because they don't believe the exact same thing you do, and because they don't believe the same thing you do does not make them a bad person. It doesn't even make them wrong. It's not your place to make that judgment. So if somebody's got to give up some ground soon, one way or the other, start living your life a little bit better like that. You see somebody out there, and if you're pro-life and one of your friends is pro-choice, and it's just like, okay, talk to them, let them know how you feel, see if they, what they feel, but you know, be friends at the end. Don't judge them. I mean,
Right.
Drew and I, we've talked about plenty of times where Drew and I, you know, we
We've gone
debate on
back and forth.
things. Yeah. And in most cases, we agree with each other. You know, there's a
Mhm.
few things that separate us from a little bit on the left and a little bit on the right, which we are.
Yeah.
So
We definitely
and-
don't hate one another.
no,
And
no,
at the end,
he's my best
and
friend,
even
one
these-
of my best friends in the world.
yeah, even one of our discussions can get a little heated. We actually had a little debate off camera last week, a couple weeks ago. Poor
Oh,
Nathan's
yeah.
sitting there watching the two of us, and we're
I'm just
starting to
watching, yeah.
we're starting to point at each other through the camera, and we're raising our voices a little bit. And if I tell him, he's like, don't worry about it. We're not mad at each other. We just get opinionated sometimes, and we have our debates and our
And
discussion.
that's what
But
they
at
are.
the end of
They're
the day,
opinions. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
To your face.
and
And
just as far as
I'm
as far as
kidding.
I know, you're not.
Right.
But at the end of the day, though, we have a few differences. Big deal. And at the end of the day, Doug and we're best friends. So
I know Drew's a great guy.
Yeah.
I know he's a great guy. He's a great dad. He's going to take care of his kids. He's going to raise his kids to be great people who might agree or disagree with a few things I do. But when it all comes down to it, we don't think somebody is bad for believing in something that we don't.
Right.
Unless it's like murder. Then,
yeah,
okay.
I mean there are
Serial
extremes.
killers.
Straight up
that
murder.
Serial killers might be in trouble.
Yeah, there's some extremes, but for the most part, you have a difference. And
kind
You
of
know
on
what?
that, kind of on that subject, and diving back into the behind the movie thing. There is a clip that Doug sent me not too long ago that I'm going to play for you in a minute. But we think that some of the reason audiences turned on this movie was how they felt about the lead actor, Mel Gibson. And unfortunately, that has probably played an effect on how people view this film. But we don't bring this up to judge him or anything like that. What we wanted to play for you in a moment after Doug introduces the backstory here is this clip of Robert Downey Jr. and how this story arc ended for Mel Gibson, which can be pretty powerful. So, Doug, do you want to kind of tell us what we're going to look at?
Yeah. So, well, the video, or do you want me to explain?
Well, explain what happened to Mel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, because especially, this happened back in 2004 or 5.
Oh
Yeah.
man, it was
Early
2000. I was in high school.
Yeah. So there are kids who are in their 20s.
2010. After
Was
this
it
movie.
2010?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I looked it up
Right.
today. I forgot.
All right. So but still, there are some teenagers, even some 18-year-olds who would have been 3 when this happened. So they don't see Mel Gibson the way we do. I grew up with Mel Gibson.
Mhm.
When I saw him in Road Warrior the first time, I was like, who is this guy? He's cool. He's got this weird accent. Then he got rid of the accent. But yeah, Lethal Weapon 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't remember how many there are,
Patriot.
Braveheart, The Patriot, again,
Con Air.
yeah,
No.
he wasn't in Con Air.
Not
Yeah,
Con Air.
it
It was
wasn't
the
that.
airplane one. He did an airplane
was
one
just,
with Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. Yeah.
I
Just
didn't know about
some
that.
great movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was one of the biggest stars through the 80s and 90s. And then he in 2010, unfortunately, got a little bit too drunk at a party, and on his way home, he got pulled over, and he just lashed out at the cop, and just some. I'm not gonna make any excuses for him or anything like that, but he did say some anti-Semitic things.
Yeah.
He said some stuff about
I think it was Jewish people. but not
Jewish people running Hollywood. I do know The Passion had come out not too long before that. He
Mhm.
got a lot of heat from that, and two,
Yeah, he actually. Yeah.
he got a lot of heat from that. But two, and I'm not going to throw out any opinions on this whatsoever, but he got 0 nominations through the Academy. And as a person who saw the movie, if I tried to not look, take off my religious glasses and watch it. I mean, it was great acting. Cinematography was great. Obviously, a story everybody knows. It seems like something should have been passed out nomination wise. It may have had one, but whatever the case, he was getting a lot of heat because he did a movie about Jesus, and then I think he got a little bit upset because he wasn't awarded for it, and got pulled over and just let some words fly. And unfortunately, a cop was there. They got the body cam, so everything was recorded. I think some of it got out, and
Mhm.
it just cut him straight from there.
Well, and,
Yeah.
and during that time, so he had a lot of rough stuff going on in his personal life. I read about today. I see why he was having such a hard time at that time. And he'd been through a divorce, and then he started dating like a Russian singer. They had a baby. They had a breakup, and I think there was a voicemail that he left that got out. That's what I heard about. I didn't know about the police officer
No, he made some comments, and it
Yeah.
happened to be the police officer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he'd been through like 2 breakups. There were kids stuck in the middle, and so I see why he was struggling. Now, what was hard to watch was like the public. I mean, I am of the opinion that if you mess up like that, especially publicly, like I would be hard enough on myself. Like no one would really have to tell me, "Hey, man, what you did was wrong." Like, but you have the whole world if you're famous, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
throwing that at you and guilting you. And he didn't get a lot of Hollywood gigs for about 10 years. I can imagine he probably punished himself more than or enough that he didn't need the whole world doing that. I mean, it would just be hard to get up every day.
Yeah.
Not to mention he was going through what he was going through with his relationships. So he disappears for a while from Hollywood, basically. I remember going to, I think the movie's called Ransom,
Mhm.
maybe in 2012. I remember going to the theater to see that. And that's the first time I had seen him in a movie for a while. And then he kind of dropped off the radar again. More recently, I saw him in Father Stew, and I think people have softened towards him, and he was really good in that movie. But you can see like he was very involved in another faith film, which I thought was amazing because that's like the Christian movie that they didn't sanitize to try to clean up the language and stuff. Like they
Mhm.
left that a very raw story,
A very
and
true story.
it's very powerful because it's very real that way. But so Mel has rebounded a little bit, but we do have this clip here. Should we play the clip now?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a clip where Robert Downey Jr. is being awarded through some foundation or something like that. And they asked him, who would you like to present the award? And he said, I want Mel Gibson to present it, right in the middle of when Mel is going through all of this controversy. He steps up and he's like, I want my friend Mel to give my speech and or to introduce me. So Mel Gibson gets up there and he introduces Robert Downey Jr., who is getting an award for excellence for him. This whole event is about him. And this is why I think Robert Downey Jr. is an awesome dude. So that's all that. Go ahead and just play the clip.
All right.
Actually, I asked Mel to present this award to me for a reason, because when I couldn't get sober, he told me not to give up hope, and he urged me to find my faith. Didn't have to be his or anyone else's as long as it was rooted in forgiveness. And I couldn't get hired, so he cast me in the lead of a movie that was actually developed for him, and he kept a roof over my head, and he kept food on the table. And most importantly, he said that if I accepted responsibility for my wrongdoings, and if I embraced that part of my soul that was ugly, hugging the cactus, he calls it, he said that if I hugged the cactus long enough, I'd become a man of some humility, and that my life would take on a new meaning. And I did, and it worked. All he asked in return was that someday I help the next guy in some small way. It's reasonable to assume that at the time he didn't imagine the next guy would be him. Or that someday was tonight. So anyway, on this special occasion, and in light of the recent holidays, including Columbus Day, I humbly ask that you join me, unless you are completely without sin, in which case you picked the wrong industry, in forgiving my friend his trespasses, offering him the same clean slate you have me, and allowing him to continue his great and ongoing contribution to our collective art without shame. He's hugged the cactus long enough.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
I mean,
I think it's
that's
amazing.
That's
really cool.
selfless. That is how everyone, if you just take 1 second and think about that, and it's like, what if I acted like that? Oh God, place would be so much more peaceful.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
people
Did
make
you know
mistakes.
Robert Downey Jr. quoted Jesus there too when he says, "Unless you're completely without sin." He's
Mhm.
quoting
Cast the stone. Yeah.
when people were trying to stone a woman, and Jesus shows up and says, "Whoever's completely without sin, cast the first stone," and they all walk away.
Mhm.
I think did Jesus also say, if that's the case, you picked the wrong effing industry?
No, but that's pretty
I don't
funny.
remember that. But that's RDJ. He can take a serious moment, make it funny, and bring it serious again. That's why he's such an amazing actor. That's why he's built up Disney. It fell down. So what do? They bring him back to build it up again. I mean, can't get away from Marvel because he is Marvel. He is that person.
Yeah.
And if everyone could see the world in the same eyes, it would, be a lot better.
Yeah. I remember when Mel made his comments and I saw that, I was kind of shocked because, I liked Mel Gibson, and it's always sucks when you see a guy that you might admire and you enjoy his stuff, and then he comes out and he says something like that. And you're just like, oh no, like really? And now I didn't turn on him to where I despised him. I think like a lot of people did. I understand everybody makes mistakes. I've said things that I probably shouldn't have said. We all have. We've all done things that we shouldn't have done. And you regret it later. So I didn't turn on him, but I can understand where some people could be turned off by that and maybe say, you know what, I'm not going to see his next movie, and I'm not, I don't care to ever see another Mel Gibson film again. But what I don't get is how somebody who can say, oh yeah, I really liked The Patriot and I really liked Signs. It was really good. Oh, but then Mel Gibson opened his mouth, so I don't like those movies anymore. That's just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
Yeah,
that's
I don't
just
want
dumb.
him to.
I don't get that. It's like the movie didn't change. You can still see it and go, yeah, I can't think of anything on top of my head, but I'm sure there's an actor who I think is a complete buffoon who I don't care for, but that was a good movie though. I can like the movie. I don't have to necessarily like the guy.
I mean, again, no offense to anybody watching, but Tom Cruise. I mean, he went a little bit over the top with all the Scientology and everything like that. He got weird there for a minute, and his career started going down a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think I think of Tom Cruise, and I don't want to talk bad about a religion, but I don't understand it. But a lot of the stuff I've heard about it, it makes me look at Tom Cruise and it's like, really? Maybe I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's what you believe, huh?
Mhm.
But at the same point, he's going to make a great movie.
Yeah. He is.
Yeah, he's excellent at his craft.
He's the only one putting decent movies out there almost anymore. That's not a comic book movie.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, but at the same point, yes, I totally understand. I mean, if, to any Jewish person out there who's watching, if you're sitting there going, well, I can't watch his stuff, I understand.
Oh yeah, I totally understand that.
One of my favorite sitcoms of all time is The Cosby Show. I loved that show. What an amazing TV show. One of the first Black characters who was successful and was intelligent. And, he was, and that's what Bill Cosby was. Disregarding everything. I don't want to disregard. I shouldn't say disregard. My apologies. If you just put that over here for a second, he had so many great messages. He had, throughout the TV shows he did, a couple of movies, the Fat Albert Gang, it was all about positive messages, and for the kids and for families and for African Americans and for the whole everything. And I've watched those reruns constantly up through late 90s until I've watched them all so much I got bored with them. But now, after the aftermath of everything that has happened, I can't go back and watch those right now.
I can't.
Maybe someday I can. I mean, his stand-up, I've got 6 different LPs sitting in my record collection of Bill Cosby's comedy acts back
his
in the day.
records in the 60s and 70s were amazing.
They can still stand up today. Almost, and it's just, but right now I can't watch those. I can't listen to those records. So I'm not saying that anybody who's having trouble watching Mel Gibson is wrong, because I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. I understand. But to just jump on the bandwagon and say anything Mel Gibson does is bad, and M. Night casted him, so M. Night movies now suck too, and blah blah, and it's like no.
Yeah, I would
I agree
say,
with you, Doug. I think Bill Cosby that sucked too when Bill Cosby.
That was heartbreaking.
It's just like, oh my god, because you're so funny, and you're right. His show is great. The Cosby Show was fantastic, and I'm sure
one of the greatest of all
watch
time.
it and still enjoy it, but it just looks a little different, knowing. So yeah, I totally understand too. It's hard to see. It's hard to see it, but I'm not going to go as far as saying, well, the Cosby Show is a horrible show, though, because it's not a horrible show. It was a really good show. It's just,
I'd be willing to say it inspired a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like Robert Downey Jr.'s story, I mean, it shows you that like Mel did good too. Like Mel probably, I don't know if he saved Robert Downey Jr.'s life or not, but he may have,
definitely did. I think.
He was deep into it. Like,
so
his lowest point, he was running down the street in his underwear, chasing some like little green monsters or something like that.
Yeah.
He was so high. I mean, I may be way off, but there was something. I mean, he was he wasn't Robert Downey Jr.
No, he had always started his career in the 80s. He was in the 80s. He was always like a small supporting actor in comedies, Back to School, and let's see, he was on one season of SNL when he was
Weird
18.
Science.
Yeah, Weird Science. Him
and Anthony Michael Hall did a handful of movies. They were like the first Coreys.
Right.
They were the Coreys before the Coreys.
They did a season in 1986 of SNL together when they were both 17. It only lasted one season. So he always had a bit thing, and then I think like his first real big starring role was when he played Charlie Chaplin. But then he got way into some bad stuff, and yeah, he was off. Now, what's the movie that Mel Gibson cast him in?
That I'm not sure about. Actually, here,
look
you
that
keep
up.
Talking, I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, but he definitely 100% got Robert Downey back. Back to it. He got him straightened out. So,
this is like a prime example of how like forgiving somebody and giving them a second chance can like heal someone, because Rob Downey Jr. got that, and it's amazing that he was able to give that back to Mel.
That was cool.
But
Yeah.
like, and you never want to see people shouldn't be defined by their mistakes or a single point in time or anything like that. So, you know, it's hard for me to even see like celebrities get grilled in the news. And I probably understand a little bit of what Mel was going through after he made The Passion of the Christ, because, you know, the religious content is very difficult to make because there are some strong opinions about it. I run another YouTube channel called Brewery Ministries, and it's a theology channel, and people grill me every day and say things that are pretty harsh about the things that I believe or present on there. And so I could see how, I mean, I have to guard myself a little bit against some bitterness, because every day you're seeing that stuff. So I know that when he directed that film, I mean, there's a whole article on Wiki about the controversy behind that he went through when he was making The Passion of the Christ. So I could see some religious hurt being in him. And you got to remember that like people's personalities change too when they're drunk. So that doesn't necessarily reflect how they are, you know, 99% of the time either.
Right.
So we don't have any idea if he really believes the things he said or not. But I am all about what Robert Downey did here, because I think he did the right thing. And Robert Downey took some heat for saying this, but you know, everybody doesn't see things the same way.
Right.
But I think this is a powerful story of forgiveness, and I would love to see more of that in the world, because I think that's part of the answer to healing society, which is in a tough place right now. I think
you got to remember that these celebrities, they're human also.
Yeah.
Right. It's just everything is magnified with them. And a lot of people have a hard time when they, I'm not saying Mel Gibson is my hero. He's not my favorite actor, but I mean, I enjoy what he does. But I remember being 13 or 14, and that's when I fell in love with the Beatles. Like, you know, I had listened to the Beatles since I was little because my dad had the records and my aunt listened to them. And so I knew a lot of their songs. But when I got to about high school is when I started really getting into it. And that's all I could do was listen to these guys, and then listening to Paul solo stuff and John solo stuff. And John Lennon is my favorite musician of all time. Like my favorite Beatles, John. He's my favorite musician. I listened to all, you know, I got all of his solo stuff. And I started reading this biography on him. And that's when I realized that John did a lot of drugs, and John cheated on his wife a whole bunch, and John would get into fights because of his alcohol and drug abuse. And it cast such a different light on him that I was shocked. And I remember telling my mom, like, you won't believe the stuff that I'm reading. And she's like, I know, sometimes it's hard when you realize that one of your heroes is human. And I'm like, that's a good point. You know, you just got to understand that everyone is going to make a mistake. So, you know, is he nothing but? Is it nothing but mistakes, or is there a lot of good that goes into it also? Like, is he making mistakes at certain times? But you know, you look at like John Lennon, he did a lot of good too. So, you know, it wasn't like he was just a complete jerk all the time.
Yeah.
I love the
Beatles.
I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set. That was Beatles, right?
That was a Beatles song. It was sung by a Beatle.
Close enough.
Well, that is the thing to note about Mel, though. Like this is an example where we can look at his life and see that he has put positivity into the world too. You know. But yeah, Doug, did you find that link?
I did. And as allegedly the movie guy of our group, I've never heard of this movie, The Singing Detective.
Oh, I have never heard of that.
Starring Robert Downey Jr. and Robin Wright now. and Mel
Now I kind
Gibson
of want to watch it.
and Katie Holmes and Adrian Brody and Carla Gugino and Stan Rubinek. And there's
So a bunch of people from M.
10
Night
people
films.
I recognize. I can just
What
sit here and think,
year is
yeah, that
that?
one. 2003. Wait, where you at? 2003.
That was in 2000.
Oh, but that's so that's after Robert Downey's struggles and before Mel's struggles. That's the
Gibson,
year
yeah.
before Signs, I believe, because Signs is
The year
2000.
of, or was that 04? Oh wait,
Science
I
is
think it's
2002, I thought.
Yep, you were right. It's 2002.
two. Okay, so yeah. So this was after Signs, but of course Mel was on a high at that point because everyone loved Signs at that point too. So
Yeah.
this,
So both M. Night and the lead actor in this film were on a high, right? So they're riding high, and then both of them go through career difficulties and personal. Well, I don't know that M. Night went any personal difficulties, but he had career stumbles after that. So
well, again, I think
writer, director, and lead actor, their careers are all going down after this film, and that probably casts a light on how people see the film. But we think it's worth watching. So we think if you
100.
we
We
watch
didn't really
it
talk
and
about the movie that much, did we?
Yeah.
We got a video for that one. If you wanna go
Yeah,
back
some
and
great
check that one
themes
out.
in it. And like I said, watch it as a movie. Don't watch it as a religious film. Don't watch it as a non-believer. Just watch it as a person watching a movie.
And enjoy
And
it.
I would say
enjoy it. That's the thing. Yeah, enjoy it.
if
Don't
you
try to
do watch it as a religious film, because I like to watch movies from that perspective, just to see what is the writer trying to say from a spiritual perspective. Just recognize that it's only going to show you extremes, so they're going to look like caricatures, and that faith has a lot more nuance in it. Otherwise, you might get the wrong idea. So
Right.
there you go. Well, any last thoughts, guys?
Well, we kept this one short, didn't we? We haven't hit an
Yeah,
hour
under
yet.
an hour, almost.
Hey,
All right,
But
guys.
I think
I got
that's
nothing left. What are we doing next Monday, Nathan?
Ghostbusters.
What do we got for the kiddos out there?
We've got a Ghostbusters. Wait, I almost said it. Oops.
Don't say it.
Ghostbusters 2016.
There you go.
We have an
I've told
interesting
you call it Ghostbusters 3 and
review
we're
of
fighting.
that in the style of The Office. So we hope you enjoy it. We'll see you next Monday.
Thanks for watching.
Peace out.
Or in.